Welcome back to the Sugar Spice and Rose YouTube channel. My name is Erica and today I'll be showing you exactly how to make Bajan horseshoes. I will be showing you how to make the puff pastry along with a delicious pineapple jam. The flakiness of these pastries with the horseshoes and my meat rolls, which will be coming soon, it was still fantastic. Even though I didn't get an even lamination, it still worked. I will be showing you the tips so that you can avoid the mistakes that I make. If you didn't know, Bajan horseshoes are a staple in any and every bakery in Barbados. They are a flaky horseshoe shape jam-filled pastry that, as I said, is usually sold in bakeries and it's loved by many Bajans and anyone who tries them. But because a lot of people aren't taught how to make Bajan horseshoes, they probably never attempt them or just buy them because they're easier to buy, which they are. But in the end, I always believe that having the skill to make things, even if it doesn't come out like bakery quality or industry standard quality, at least you can make something for you and your friends. And that is the reason why I started the In the Heart of the Bajan series, because I want to be able to teach you how to make beloved Bajan delicacies in the comfort of your own home. So without further ado, let me show you how to make Bajan horseshoes. To make my puff pastry, I take cold but pliable butter and I add flour to it. I started to use a wooden spoon, but that did not work. So then I went in with my hand mixer just to make sure all of that is combined properly, and it is a bit smooth like you see it here, but you don't want to whip this to parchment paper. You're going to place that butter in the center of that parchment paper and you are going to make a square. Now I will have stated on the screen, but I would recommend you want this block to be a bit thinner than I have it right now, because as you will see when I go to put it encase it in the flour, having it a little thinner would have aided in making the rolling out process a bit easier. But no matter what size or thickness you use for this butter block, you want that your flour can encase it or wrap around this butter, and you will see what I mean when we get to that step. So again, you may ignore the dimensions I have for the square, but you want to make sure that that flour can encase that butter block. To make your flour block, you are going to combine your flour, your other dry ingredients, and the butter. I used my hand mixer again just to make it easier on myself to break that butter up into the flour into very fine breadcrumbs. It looks like nice crumbly sand. Then I take my cold water and using my spatula, I'm stirring that flour to make sure it's getting hydrated by the flour nice and slow. You don't want to rush this process. And as I am stirring it, I go in with my hands to start kneading it. I'm not trying to develop gluten, but I am trying to bring this dough together. And as you can see, I have a fair bit of dry flour left. So I'm sprinkling in a bit of water just to hydrate it. And then I'm going to try to knead that into the dough once again, and when it does, I only need it just to bring that dough together to make sure all of that flour is hydrated and to make it a little smoother. It's not going to be perfect. Then onto a clean surface, I am going to use a rolling pin to roll it out into a rectangle, and again those dimensions will be listed on the screen. I take my butter block just so that I can get a better idea of the size I want. So as I'm rolling it out, I realized that I needed to just get the shape a bit better. So I folded it onto itself, and that is where you just use your eye to make sure you're getting the shape that you want. And I allow those to chill in the fridge until they are both firm. I remove them from the fridge, and then as you can see, I tried to cover my butter block with the dough and it did not work. So I'm trying to break down this butter to make sure that it fits in a bit better. So I'm not being perfect with this, as you can see, and this is a process that even if you have the right dimensions, you will still have to just work at it a bit just to make it fit. That's just life. You just have to adjust things as you go. So after I have fixed the butter block, I wrap that other half of the dough over the butter block and I seal it with my hands. I turn it over and I fold that excess dough underneath or on top the dough now at this point. From here, I dust the surface well with flour. And as you can see, I am pressing into this dough, and that was my mistake because the butter block was still a bit too cold. You want that butter block to be cold, but not hard. You want it to be pliable. So my butter block was a bit too hard. So I was having a hard time rolling it out, and I got a fair bit of butter breakage, but that was fine in the end. But that's something that you don't want when you're rolling out puff pastry. So if you get any spots like you saw just now, a little bit of the butter leaking out, just cover it with flour and continue. But if your butter is nice and pliable, you will have an easier time. So that is a tip that I would recommend. After you've rolled it out, I like to remove that excess flour by brushing it with a brush. Then I do the letter fold, which is folding it into thirds. Fold one part of it into the center and then the other part of it on top of that one. Wrap it tightly in plastic wrap and I allow that to chill in the fridge for approximately 20 to 30 minutes. Again, you want it to be cold, not hard. I repeat this step of rolling out this dough, and I was having a somewhat easier time now as I was rolling it out. After rolling it out, I remove that excess flour and I do the letter fold once again, just like you would fold an actual letter. Fold it in thirds. Cover it in plastic wrap tightly once again. I place it in the fridge to chill for another 20 to 30 minutes until it's cold but not hard. I brush it with more flour and I roll it out once again. If I get any butter leakage at all, just cover it with flour and continue. Remove that excess flour once again, and I am going to do the envelope fold, as I like to call it at this point. The envelope fold is where you fold a quarter of the dough onto itself and then the other 3/4 to meet that quarter. Just imagine what an envelope would look like. Then I'm going to repeat that step one more time for the final fold, and I just remove the excess from the ends because I just wanted it to look a bit neater. I add them back in just because I didn't want to waste the dough, and I repeat the envelope fold once again. Fold a quarter of that dough onto itself and the other 3/4 to meet that one, and then fold them together. Yes, that's the best way I can explain it along with the video. Wrap it tightly in plastic wrap once again and allow that to chill in the fridge overnight. And now I will show you exactly how I'm going to use it for this recipe. After my dough has chilled in the fridge overnight, I cut it in half because I'll be using half of the horseshoes and then half of meat rolls, which will be coming soon. And with this cross section, you can see that it isn't as even as I would like it, but it did create a good end product that was still flaky. So I like to dust my surface, the dough, and my rolling pin really well. And again, take your time when you're rolling this out. So I like to just gently press into the dough from all angles into a square. And I roll it out until it gets to a certain thickness. And then when I've been rolling it out for a while, I like to wrap it in plastic wrap very tightly. You don't want any air to get on this from the fridge. And I place it in the fridge for approximately 25 to 30 minutes just so it gets cold and I can roll it out a little bit more until it is this thickness, which I will say 1/8 of an inch thick. Then I take this horseshoe cutout that I made by hand. I actually drew it and cut it out, wrapped it in plastic wrap, and I used that to cut out the shape. I could not find my paring knife. I think someone broke it and I just never replaced it. So I'm using my palette knife to cut out the shape. But that's what you want to do. You want to have an even amount. So 2 pieces of the horseshoe shaped pastry is going to make 1 horseshoe. So keep that in mind when you're making your pieces. Place those on a parchment lined baking sheet. Cover them well with plastic wrap and leave them in the fridge until they are completely cold once again. To make the pineapple jam filling, I'm taking a crushed can of pineapple with a little bit of pineapple jam. I did have the pineapple jam on hand, but I just didn't like the flavor. So I added some of the pineapple jam to the crushed pineapple along with a little bit of cinnamon, spice, and a squeeze of lemon juice. As always, the recipe will be listed in the description box, so you can check there. And I like to cook it on a low flame until it has this beautiful, rich, caramelized color. Again, stirring constantly as you're cooking it in the pan, and you can taste it as you go. It's going to be hot, so take out some, allow it to cool, and taste it. And once it is the consistency that you see right here, nice and thick and jammy, I place it on a baking sheet and I let that cool. Then I place it in a piping bag, and the chunks of pineapple make it hard to pipe. but placing it in the piping bag makes it easier to get it onto the horseshoe shaped pastry. So take your time as you're doing this. After you've put on your jam, I like to take some milk with an egg, which is the egg wash, and I beat that together. On the other half of the horseshoe, I like to brush the egg wash onto that and then place that on top of the piece that has the jam, and I use my fingers to seal the edges. That is what I like to do to make sure that it is completely sealed so none of that jam leaks out. And then you're going to repeat that step with all of your pieces, making sure you're brushing the edges, placing it onto the other piece and sealing it properly. And not only do I seal it with my fingers to make sure that it is properly sealed, I go in with a fork and I just again make sure all of the sides and the edges are crimped with that fork, and this really prevents leakage. After I finish doing that, I brush it with some more of the egg wash and I sprinkle on some brown sugar because that's how they look traditionally. The egg wash allows that brown sugar to stick to the pastry, but the egg wash also aids in giving the horseshoes color. I bake these at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 20 to 25 minutes. Depending on your oven, it may take longer or less time, but what I can say is that you will keep your eye on them after the 15-minute mark, and as they get more color, you know that they're getting closer to being done. So just watch out until they get this lovely golden brown color. Here you have it, your beautiful Bajan horseshoes that you made at home. As I always say, these were amazing. As I'm editing this video, I am craving these so much. The lamination on the pastry wasn't perfect, but in the end, it still yielded a beautifully flaky result. These Bajan horseshoes may take a little while, but they are worth it in the end. As always, thank you so much for being here. Please feel free to like and subscribe. Bye!